If you have ever played Inside from Playdead, you have noticed something interesting. Although it's a side-scroller, the player is not locked to a flat 2D plane. The camera constantly changes angle, the environments twist and curve around you, yet the controls always feel consistent. This isn't an accident. Inside doesn't lock the player to X and Y axis. Instead, it guides the player along invisible paths that bend through the environment. As the camera moves, those paths move with it, creating the illusion that you're freely exploring a 3D world while always remaining on a cinematic route. This approach gives the developers complete control over composition. Every shot can be framed exactly as intended, every camera transition feels seamless because the player's movement is already following the environment. Today we're going to recreate that system in Unity. So I'm going to start up from a brand new scene. I've only set up a very simple environment here. So I need a character to move alongside this corridor-like path. Well, first I'm going to need a spline. The spline is what can help me to guide the player through a particular path. So here's how it works. I'm going to right click and create a spline using Draw Splines tool. I'm going to click on the scene and draw the spline as I end. So once I'm finished, I'm going to press escape. And here's my spline. So next, I'm going to need an object which I'm going to use to slide on this spline. The idea is that I use that guide object to point my main character toward the path it is supposed to move. So here's how it works. I'm going to create a sphere. Movement guide, I'm going to call that. Right? So I'm going to place it anywhere on the scene, doesn't matter because I'm going to link it to the spline anyway. So next I'm going to create a script that links this movement guide to the spline. And then I use that script to slide the movement guide alongside this spline. So here's how I do it. I'm going to create a new script. I'm going to call it movement guide. Then I'm going to drag and drop it onto the sphere. Now we're going to open up the editor. And inside the movement guide, here's what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to create a reference to the spline, like so. Spline container. Next, I'm going to create a variable, public float, position, and I'm going to make it a value between 0 and 1. Next, I'm going to simply use this position to set the transform of the movement guide object, like so. Transform position equals spline container evaluate position. Pretty simple. So let's go back to the inspector and let's play the game. Now you can see if I change the position, oops, I've not set the spline container. Here's the spline container. And now when I move the position, the sphere slides along the spline. Now, instead of moving the position like that, I need the movement to happen using player input. Then I'm going to attach a player input to this movement guide. Player input. So how does this player input work? I have another video which I'm going to provide you the link. And in that video, I have explained to you how this Unity new input system works. So I already have an input system set up, which is in my previous folder. I'm going to just copy this in this project and I'm going to use it here. So I'm going to assign this to the actions, like so, and change the behavior to invoke Unity events. Then I'm ready to define a function inside of movement guide, then hook it up with player. First, let me show you what I have in the custom player inputs. I just have a simple map, and inside of that I have a move action which I have bound to two different inputs. One of them is for keyboard and the other one is for gamepad left stick. So now let's back to the movement guide. I'm going to press edit. I'm going to create a function called onInputMove. Input action callback context. So inside of context, I can read the value of player input, like so. Then I'm going to store this in my own variable, input, which is going to be a private variable. So how do I use this? Inside of update, I'm going to add input X to my position, like so. So if the input is positive, it's going to move to right, and if negative, it's going to move to left. So let's try it out. Let's play the game. So although I'm pressing the keys, it doesn't seem to move, so there's something wrong. So the reason it's not moving is that I've not assigned the actual movement. So I'm going to open up the player input, press this plus button, drag and drop movement guide, and assign the onInputMove to this callback. Then I'm going to play. Okay, so it suddenly disappears because it's actually instantly moving my position to 1. So that's not what I want, right? Here's what I need to do. I need to normalize this input. So the simplest way I can do this is to just multiply by a very small variable, say 0.04. That's a very small variable. That's not the best way to do it, but we'll get there in a second. So now it's a little bit better, although still not going to be how we're going to use it. So if I'm going to reduce this to 4, it's still not what we precisely want. So let us fix it like this. I need this speed to be the actual movement speed of the character. So I need to normalize it somehow. Say I can assign 4 to the speed and then normalize it inside of update. So this position will always be a value between 0 and 1, and it doesn't suddenly snap to the end of this line. So here's how we're going to do this. In order to normalize this input, we're going to use the length of the spline inside of this container. So here's how it works. First, I'm going to read the length of spline. So spline container, spline length. Here's the first thing I need. Then I'm going to divide the speed by spline length. So let's see how it works now. Let's play. So we're missing one tiny thing. I'm going to multiply it by time.delta time. Okay, pretty slow, isn't it? So I need to increase the speed. Here we go. So it's a lot easier to control the speed of movement guide. So what if I want to have multi-level environments? In that case, I cannot use the guide object as the main player. So what should I do? I'm going to use this spline and the guide object as what they are, a guide, not the actual player. So I'm going to drag them up and I'm going to create another object as the player. So I'm going to create another script for it, and I'm going to assign it to the capsule. I'm going to call it the actual player. Then I'm going to assign it to the capsule, like so. Then I'm going to make this actual player copy the exact X and Z coordinates of the guide object. So first I'm going to give it a reference to the guide object, transform guide object, and inside of update, I'm going to make it copy the exact X and Z coordinates of the guide object. Then I'm going to assign the guide object and then press play. So the character is now following the X and Z coordinates of the guide object. But what about the gravity? I'm just going to add a rigid body and unlock the rotation on X and Z axis. And I'm going to move this platform a little bit down. And then I'm going to press play. Okay. So what if I want to jump? So I'm going to go inside the actual player. I'm going to declare the rigid body and call the get component on rigid body. Then I'm going to create a function called jump rigid body add force vector 3 up multiply by, say, I'm going to make it a variable. Jump force mode is going to be an impulse. Might not be the best way, but gets the job done. So to make it work, I'm going to create a new action, call it jumpo. That's a funny name. Let it be jumpo. Then I'm going to add, then I'm going to bind spacebar for this jumpo, or another binding, south, on gamepad. I'm gonna save, and this time I'm gonna assign the player input to the actual player. I'm gonna drag and drop the custom player input here, change the behavior to invoke Unity events, and I don't need to hook up the move callback, but I need to hook up this jumpo like so. Actual player goes here, and I'm going to call the jump function. Let's press play. So it seems like the force is too much, which I'm gonna reduce it now to, say, 2. Let's make it 3 so I can go back. And then I'm gonna add, let's set it to 3. Then I'm gonna add another platform. I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller, like so, and put it here. So let's press play. If I jump, I can go to the next floor. If I don't, I'm moving under the, I was gonna move the camera angle a bit. So, okay. Line of view. And here is the lower floor. So this is basically how Inside controls its character. There are a lot more complicated things we can work on. For example, if I'm gonna, say, put this obstacle here, and I'm gonna press play, and move the character forward, this is what happens. And the reason is, the movement is happening based on the guide object. This guide object needs to know the conditions of the actual player. For example, detect the obstacles ahead and prevent moving, detect interactions, and many more complicated things. So that's all for this video. I hope you found it helpful and learned something new along the way. If you enjoyed it, consider leaving a like and subscribing. Thanks for watching. If you watched it to the end, you're awesome, and I'll see you in the next video.